Welcome back. Someone once said this. The truth is, tariffs are taxes. They don't punish foreign governments. They punish American families. When we tax imports, we raise the price of everything, from groceries to smartphones, washing machines, and every other conceivable product. It is time that we save the American people from high prices and prevent the Democrats' restoration of power. It's time to terminate the tariffs. Our next guest, that's who, Republican Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky. How did we get here? How did the Republican Party get here, Senator?
How did we all get here? I mean, the whole debate is so fundamentally backwards and upside down. It's based on a fallacy. And the fallacy is this, that somehow in a trade, someone must lose. That somehow when you trade with someone, there's a loser and someone's taking advantage of you and China's ripping you off or Japan's ripping you off. It's absolutely a fallacy. Every trade that occurs in the marketplace is mutually beneficial. If you have a free society and I trade with you, if you want to sell me your coat and I give you $200 for it, we both agree to it and we're both happy with the trade. No American consumer trades with China. They trade with Walmart, or they may buy something from China, but they individually buy something they want and they make a decision. The trade is always a win-win. Now, you could artificially do this accounting between countries and say, oh, trade deficit, look at this trade deficit. But I have a trade deficit with my grocery store. The people who employ me, if I work for Corvette and they employ me, they have a trade deficit with my labor. They buy my labor and I never buy their cars. So you can have this artificial accounting and it makes it look like a bad thing, but you have to ask yourself, is trade good or bad? And if you look at the trade deficit, in times of a recession, the trade deficit goes down. So if the tariffs push us into a recession, we could reduce the trade deficit because we're all buying less stuff. We have to get back to the fundamentals of, is trade good or is trade bad?
Senator, you are maybe getting some support and some praise from Democrats, but the support and praise from Republicans, you're saying that you're getting it, but these are individuals that you don't even want to be on the record for saying that. Is that fair to say?
It's a quiet whisper, and people come up to me in the hall. You know how in Atlas Shrugged, they would come up and say, who is John Galt? They whisper in my ear, free trade is good. Keep going, keep going. But they don't want to say it because of the politics of it. And look, when I put free trade articles on my Twitter account, I get mobbed. I mean, I get what they call ratioed. I get more comments than likes, which they say isn't good. But we have to have this debate, and people have to understand that trade is between individuals, not countries, and it's a false accounting. So I'm committed to this. I'll keep talking about it. And there's one graph, if you look at it, and it has trade. Trade for the last 70 years went up exponentially, international trade, but so did GDP per capita. We get wealthy with trade, not without trade. It's such a fundamental debate that it's worth having.
And I get all that. So it's almost like it was almost like a creep. Okay, what about some targeted tariffs? Okay, well, let's do it this way. Well, you know, what about China? And then there's fentanyl, and you could sort of see the creep, right. Mission creep, or whatever you call it. Now we're at across-the-board tariffs, and even Republicans that in the past would have called themselves Reagan Republicans are kind of going along with it. How does it end?
Tariffs, like sanctions, are good until they're applied. Once they're applied, they're of no value and they're a detriment to the economy. But if you threaten tariffs and you get other people to lower their tariffs, you can say, oh, this is wonderful. If you threaten sanctions and you can get a country to change their behavior, that's wonderful. If you have them in place, they're only of value if you can remove them. So if you can remove tariffs and lower tariffs and get, more equal tariffs, that's good. But we have to start from talking about the truth. One of the things they say with Canada is, oh, there's a 270% tariff on dairy products going from the U.S. into Canada. Well, you know what the real tariff is? 0. That's a big difference between what the truth is. So there's a certain amount of goods, dairy goods, that go to Canada every year, and they go at 0%. If we exceed a certain amount, there's this ridiculous 270% tariff, but we've never encountered it. And the USMC renegotiated it, and raised the level that's under zero. Trump should be congratulated for USMC raising the amount of dairy that goes in at zero. But we have to have an honest debate. We can't go around saying that there's a 270% tariff when that's not really the truth.
Senator, we had Ray Dalio on talking about how he understands why we got to this point. There are sections of the country that have gotten hollowed out by free trade, people who lost their jobs, industries that left towns upended. What could and should we do to help those who have been hurt by free trade if it's not tariffs?
The middle class, if and when they've been hollowed out, have been hollowed out by free spending, by debt and inflation. So the last 4 years were difficult for the middle class, and they lost ground, and the average family income went down because they lost purchasing power. Their wages didn't keep up with inflation. Inflation comes from debt. It's nothing to do with free trade. Trade is proportional to wealth.
What happened, Senator, over the last 50 years, losing 60,000 factories? What should we have done about that? You can see where the president's coming from.
Yes and no. If you look at the last 60 or 70 years of household income, the lower class under 50,000 shrunk slightly. The middle class shrunk slightly. And you know where they all went? To the upper class. Over $100,000 category tripled in constant dollars over the last 70 years. The truth is just, we have to discuss the truth. The middle class shrunk slightly, but they became richer. So, you know, there's so many good facts on this. Steven Pinker's written about it. Humanprogress.org has written about this. We have to work on facts, and it's the job really to point out fallacies. It is a fallacy that people have gotten poor. The world is richer than it's ever been. 100,000 people leave poverty every day. I mean, it's extraordinary, the phenomenon of capitalism, but trade is an integral part of capitalism. Yeah. Trade is just voluntary association. It is part of capitalism.
We learned all this. I mean, what would the world look like without comparative advantage and everything else? Are we rewriting the rules of capitalism? It's crazy.
Well, that's why we can't give up on this. This isn't me versus Donald Trump. I like Donald Trump. I've supported most of his cabinet. I'm a chairman of a committee. I've pushed his people through. We'll continue to do so. I want to cut spending. I want to balance the budget. I support so many things, but I can't support a fallacy that is going to make us lose our wealth. I have a retirement account too. I want my retirement account to stay there, and I think tariffs is going to decimate it.
Okay, so Senator, I got maybe a difficult question. If you were to advise the leaders of foreign countries that now have to negotiate with the president, what would you tell them to do? Would you tell them to ratchet things up? Because ultimately you think these tariffs are a bad thing, and maybe that would force the president to stand down? Do you think the president looks at the market and says that he has less leverage, more leverage? How would you think about it in that context? And then separately, I'll ask you later what you think the CEO community that's thinking about where they're supposed to invest and what they're supposed to do in this moment are supposed to do.
Right. You know, I'm fundamentally an American. It's hard for me to take the side of another country, but like a CFO has to do that. So if you're a CFO or a Treasury Secretary of a country, you have to do it. When you argue for a trade war is based on emotions, not facts. So the trade war won't make them richer. The trade war will say, damn it, we're going to get even. We'll get even with those SOBs, but it doesn't make the foreign country richer either. The smartest thing actually would just be to keep your tariffs low and let the U.S. founder in their problems. But the thing is, that's not what typically happens. Emotions take over, and right now is ratcheting up. But I can tell you this, if people care about the freedom of those people in Taiwan, they shouldn't want to cut off all trade with China. Okay. At the moment there is no trade with China, that is the moment that Taiwan will be taken by force.
Senator,
the main thing that keeps Taiwan as free is trade.
I couldn't get the Treasury Secretary to take a hike in the top rate for individuals, which we know a lot of small companies and medium-sized companies pay that rate, all the sub-chapter S's and pass-throughs, et cetera. I mean, is that going back to 39 cents, whatever it was, or even above that? And that would go along with Republicans suddenly like tariffs and like raising taxes on corporations.
I think there's more consensus on the taxes. I'm very hopeful that the taxes become permanent, the tax cuts from 2017. I supported them. I would have voted for them to be permanent. Yeah, I want to keep them the same or lower. No, keep them the same or lower. I'd be for lower as well, but I'm not for letting them go back up.
You don't want to raise the highest rate, do you? There's Republicans talking about raising the higher rate.
Yeah, I don't want to do that. The 2017 tax cuts brought the rates down. Let's at the very least keep that. But I will tell you that the whole thing's been muddied up because they want me now to vote to raise the debt ceiling $5 trillion, which is irresponsible. And really, then we have no levers to watch the big spenders. I propose that we raise the debt ceiling 3 months and do it every 3 months and keep voting on it until they behave themselves and quit spending so much money they don't have.
Senator, you are so unique and so you're such an independent thinker on things. Has the administration spoken with you about any of these issues? Because sometimes you agree with them, sometimes you don't. You come at it from your own perspective, and there is no dogma when it comes to you from a political spectrum.
You know, I consider that I still have a good relationship with the president. I love playing golf with him. I've played golf with him a dozen times. I saw him at Mar-a-Lago a month ago. I communicated with him last week. He does communicate with me sometimes in all caps that I need to get it together and understand how good tariffs are, but we can have disagreements because to me, there are things in this town that are fundamentally partisan. The impeachments they did were horrific, and I led the fight against the impeachments and would do it again. I supported Donald Trump, do support Donald Trump, but I don't support the tariffs, and I don't support debt. And so I have to fight those battles, or who would I be, or why should I be here if I'm not willing to fight for what the people sent me here to do?
I was thinking how smart your dad was. He named you after Ayn Rand. And then you said Atlas Shrugged, but that's totally fake. I'm going to start that rumor now. Wow, what a cool name, Rand. Your name was Randall, and people called you Randy till your wife started calling you Rand. So you can't, don't.
Yeah, that's right.
It's not from Ayn, not from Atlas.
Why change an urban myth when it sounds so good? It's better than the truth. It's much more interesting than the truth.
It's so much. I'm going with it. In fact, I'm gonna forget that I even found out it wasn't true. Senator, thank you. From the great state of Kentucky.
Thank you.
Almost as good as Ohio, but it's something to aspire to. See you later.
Coming up next.